We're four friends who live across the globe
and share a love of Bon Appétit's YouTube channel.
So we came together to bring you our thoughts on what BA serves up.
And try our hands at recreating their dishes.
Welcome to Pod Appétit.
Hey everyone, it's Justine.
Hi, it's LJ.
And it's me, Meg.
Hey, we're back for another episode of Pod Appétit. Amanda could not make it to this recording journey, but don't worry, we're going to soldier on without her. But sadly.
We miss you, Amanda.
We'll be okay, guys. We've got each other.
Yeah, we've got each other. On that note, we're going to kick off this episode by talking about what we've been up to culinary-wise. And LJ, you've had a few exciting weeks.
I have been busy in the kitchen. As you may remember, in August, I went all in on the Healthy-ish Farmers Market Challenge. And the other thing that they do on an annual basis for the past few years has been the January Feel Good Food Plan. And I have been following that. I sort of saw them come out last year, the recipes that they did for that last year, and thought that looked interesting, but I didn't follow it. I think I've made a few of the lunch recipes from last year's one, but I decided that with doing this podcast and really becoming super immersed in the world of Bon Appetit, that this year I was gonna go all in and follow along with the Feel Good Food Plan. Given how fun the Farmers Market Challenge was for me, I thought this would also be up my street as well. So this year, there's no breakfast or lunch recipes, which is a change, because they've done like a full meal plan, I guess, in previous years. It's just dinners, but that's okay, because I guess that's less work for me, less things to do. But I've not been following it as per the day when they release their recipes. I've kind of, because I've had stuff get in the way, but I have worked my way through, I think, 4 of them so far, and I'm planning on doing the remaining 6 over the course of the next week or so. So I've done the kale pesto, which we'll be talking about that video today. I've done the cauliflower tacos. I've done the cod, the za'atar cod. I've also done the lentil chicken soup with jammy onions. And I can report that so far, 4 out of the 10 dishes that have been developed for this year's Feel Good Food Plan are top fucking notch. They are absolutely delicious. I have been blown away by how good they were. I think I was a bit skeptical with some of them to start with. I think particularly the cauliflower tacos and the chicken soup. The cauliflower tacos, because I'm sorry, Justine, but I was skeptical as a meat eater that they would be filling enough for me as a vegan recipe.
I love cauliflower tacos.
I love cauliflower, and I love, and I knew it'd be delicious. I was just worried that it wouldn't feel like enough, but I am completely wrong. Happy to report that I'm wrong. It was absolutely amazing. I had all of the leftovers for lunch over the course of that week as well. And the chicken soup, I was skeptical that it would be tasty enough. The recipe doesn't call for any stock. Some of the comments suggested that they had made it, instead of with water, with chicken stock instead. But actually, I decided to stick to the recipe so that I could judge the recipe on what was suggesting to do. So it's like self-stocks, because the idea is that you cook the chicken that goes in the soup, you sort of poach it in the liquid. So, and because you're using chicken with the thigh bones in, you're kind of creating your stock by cooking the chicken, you see what I mean? It self-stocks. For something that uses so few ingredients, I was really, really, really surprised in a good way by how flavoursome it was. So I would say all of those recipes that I've done so far, I want to keep in like regular rotation. I think they're great. Let's see how, the rest of the recipes fare as I work through the rest of it. But so far, so good.
Have you noticed a trend as to whether you prefer Andy recipes or Chris recipes, or have you not really noticed?
No, I haven't. I think I like them both equally. I couldn't pick a favourite of these 4. And maybe that will change as I go through the rest of it. But I really just like them both. I just think they're both really, really good. Great recipe developers. Thumbs up.
I'm glad it's going so well. It's awesome.
Yeah. How about you guys? What have you been up to?
Well, on a similar spectrum, at the beginning of the year, I was like, oh man, I'm going to try this Cook 90 plan from Epicurious. And I've totally bombed on that one.
Oh, I did think it looked ambitious.
Yeah. Like, but I didn't know what the recipes were before, like, signing up or, like, to get the emails and be like, oh, yeah, remind me what to get. And then, like, I saw the recipes and I'm just like, this is too much. I'm like, who has time for this?
Life is too short.
Yeah, but I did actually kind of do the first one, which was a scrambled egg on toast, but they had it with trout. They're like, just pull out your leftover trout from the night before. And I'm just like, first of all, what? Second of all, no. It was a dish by Molly. It had this lovely arugula side salad.
Oh, yeah.
And so I actually made a brunch, and it was flippin' delicious.
Yay.
I made these scrambled vegan eggs for the first time, and I thought it was, like, gonna fail, but they turned out fantastic. That recipe is from Minimalist Baker, and it uses mung beans, split mung beans. So it's a mung dal and black salt, which is also another spice I got in an Indian store, which smells like rotten egg farts.
Delicious.
So
Sounds great.
when it cooks all together,
Right.
it is delicious.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was failing through the whole thing because I was like, this smells like farts.
Sulfur.
Yeah, but then I just made like the egg and it was great. So I just integrated that into the Epicurious recipe and it was fantastic. I felt like I was making fancy brunch and it was hardly any work. And so like my roommate also loved it, like rave reviews. I
Great.
did that. Yeah. And I also made the kale pesto that we're going to talk about today as well.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear about your guys' kale pesto adventures.
Caling it.
Okay, Meg, what you got?
I kind of made the added value grilled cheese. This is one of Molly's recipes. And I say kind of because what makes it, quote, added value is that it's a grilled cheese sandwich with charred scallions, pickled jalapenos, whole grain and Dijon mustards, and you put mayo on the bread instead of butter. Sounds delicious, right? Yeah. So I had all these ingredients. I was super excited. And I said to my husband, I'm making us fancy grilled cheese. And he said, I just like cheese on my grilled cheese. And I was like, come
that
on.
is not the correct
This is a
answer.
delicious recipe. But so I made a boring grilled cheese for him. And since I didn't want to go to all the trouble of making this really fancy thing for just me, I kind of dialed it back a bit. So pretty much what I took from this recipe was just adding the mustards and also using the mayo instead of butter on the bread. And also the method of cooking the grilled cheese is what I really took away from this, which is to start with a cold pan and gradually bring the heat up instead of heating up the pan first and adding the sandwich to it.
Yeah.
So it was a really good method. I think it worked wonderfully because sometimes I do overcook grilled cheese because you want to make sure the cheese is all melted inside, and that tends to make me go a little too high on the heat.
Right.
But by gradually bringing it up on one side and then flipping it and going for a little bit less time on the other side since the pan is already warm, turned out beautifully. I'm
Yeah.
never going back as far as method of cooking grilled cheese.
Great.
And I honestly really liked the mayo. It was much easier just to get full coverage of the fat on the bread with the nice creamy mayo instead of waiting for the butter to come to room temperature or what have you. And it added a nice tanginess. So
Yeah.
I really liked it.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it was good. And I also made Priya's garlic ginger chicken, which Amanda just made in the most recent side dish. So anyone who's listening should go back and definitely listen to that episode. But I made it as well. And the marinade is just delicious. The spices in the marinade are so flavorful, and the garlic itself is actually pretty spicy, so it adds a nice sort of gingery garlic heat to the whole dish. And the amchur was interesting. Amanda said in the side dish that she loved it and she thought it smelled so good. I honestly thought it smelled a little bit like prunes, which was not exactly what I
no.
was expecting. But it does taste really good. It's just a very fruity and then very tart flavor. I don't know if I'd be able to distinguish the mango in the amchur, but it's definitely fruity and tart. The only thing I'd do differently making this recipe again is that I felt there was a really big chicken to marinade ratio. Like, it was very chickeny. It was this big piece of chicken with just the marinade on the outside, and I wanted more of that wonderful marinade flavor. So maybe I'd get like smaller chicken breasts or maybe even thighs, and I think the added fattiness of thighs would be nice too. So that was really good.
Was your undercooked chicken anxiety in this recipe?
It was actually pretty good. I didn't freak out too much because I do have a meat thermometer. So when the time was up, I checked the meat thermometer and it was almost there. So I just let it go a little bit longer. I didn't even cut into the chicken before serving it. I just trusted the meat thermometer.
Way to go.
Came out very nice.
Excellent. I'm very proud.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. All right, ladies, let's move on to talking about the Bon Appetit YouTube videos for the past 2 weeks, which we don't have as many as we normally do again because of the holidays.
I have to say, I'm not sad about that.
Me either.
It's a manageable amount.
Good amount.
Exactly. So on the menu for today's episode, we have pro chefs make their favorite chicken sandwiches, Test Kitchen Talks. Chris makes kale pesto pasta from the Test Kitchen. Carla makes beans from the Test Kitchen. Pro chefs review restaurant scenes in movies, Test Kitchen Talks. Brad makes cured egg yolks, It's Alive. And Andy makes turmeric salmon with coconut from the Test Kitchen. So we're going to get started with pro chefs make their favorite sandwiches. There were a lot of people in this. 8 people?
Yeah. I am currently working from home because we're between offices. So I don't get to go into an office until beginning of February. So this was a really inspirational video for me because the meal that I struggle with inspiration for the most is lunch. And sandwiches are such a good lunch item, and it just really gave me loads of great ideas because I'm usually like, open my fridge, what is there? Just fridge picnic, I guess. I really enjoyed hearing everyone's different take on the best sandwich.
At first, I wasn't really grabbed by the premise. It sounded a little boring to me. But once I started watching it, I realized that I, like probably everyone else, has pretty strong opinions about sandwiches. Because even if you don't really have inspiration for how to make a sandwich, like you were saying, LJ, I feel like we know inherently what type of sandwiches we like.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. My one takeaway is that you guys, and I knew this before, but this just reinforced it, Americans, and I think I've mentioned this before actually, Americans pack their sandwiches so full. It's too much for me. It's too much for this Brit. I would have to like dial back the filling by about 60%. I can't handle that much in bread.
That's like professional sandwiches or like Super Bowl sandwiches, which I will talk about in a minute. But like, when you just when you're just at home, I'm just like, 2 slices of ham, please.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, LJ. I can't handle a sandwich that big. It's too big.
It's too much.
Okay, well, the episode starts off with paprika.
Paprika.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed what Brad said. I know what it looks like. I'm like, yeah, but you're not saying it. Yeah.
Oh my God, there's so many of Brad saying things wrong. It's great. Okay, Brad's sandwich, the jambon beurre.
Jambon beurre.
Jambon beurre.
Jambon beurre.
Bow.
Just because all the letters are there doesn't mean you need to say them. Brad was making a point of the fact that you should butter both sides of the bread. And I was like, of course butter both sides of the bread. Is that not a thing? Am I the only one that thinks that?
Man. I actually have never put butter on a sandwich. What? So
it's life-changing.
Are you kidding me?
But it's
butter.
How
the filling sticks to the bread.
I've used mayonnaise my whole life.
Oh, mayonnaise. Yeah, something though. You have to have something.
Yeah.
Right?
Something.
Yeah. But like, to me, using butter, like the idea of it seems gross.
Oh, yeah. I guess if for vegan, mayo would be better.
Even before.
Even before you were anti-butter. Well, I grew up with butter sandwiches. So to me, using something else is like, oh, that's new and different. How innovative.
I have to say, I think that this is maybe the only type of sandwich that I've had buttered, this ham and butter and baguette sandwich. I don't know if I've had butter served to me on a sandwich besides in this particular sandwich.
Wow.
A burrell.
Notice how I went to great lengths to not try to say the name of the sandwich, because I also
It's
cannot
like
pronounce
Aaron
it.
Burr. It's like Burr. It's just Burr.
Okay,
Well.
that's a good mnemonic device. I will remember now.
Jambon Burr.
Just put everything in terms of Hamilton and I'm done.
Yeah. Well, he added sauerkraut to this. He went rogue,
He
but
did.
that's very Brad.
That's fine.
Did you guys watch? He was a guest on this other YouTube video. I don't remember the name, but they were making Taylor ham from scratch.
Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't watch it.
He also described his like perfect ham sandwich, and it was an everything bagel plus butter plus the ham. So it's a very, to me now, Brad sandwich. That's what he eats.
Gaby made almost the exact same sandwich, not to jump ahead, but I feel like Gaby made it properly, perhaps.
Yeah, Gabby's sandwich was funny because I felt like when she was making that, I was like, this is exactly what my mum used to put in my lunchbox at school, just without the olives.
Wow.
A ham sandwich, pretty classic.
Hers is on ciabatta.
Yeah, I didn't have it on ciabatta, it was just like regular bread. I've never heard of a muffaletta. If someone can explain that to me,
sandwich,
that would be good.
So I'd heard the word, but there's no way I would be able to tell someone what is inside a muffaletta. So I'm like, I know that I've heard that word before, but please make one for me, Chris. So just watched him make it.
But it just looked like a monster. And I was like,
Yes.
no, thank you, Chris. It's too much. I'm going to have to back away. I can't handle it. I'm happy to admit that.
This sandwich pretty much reminded me exactly of the sandwiches my mom used to make. She used to make these big subs for Super Bowl Sunday parties. And they were like loaded with meat and loaded something. They were like the biggest sandwiches. I also love how he cut them into triangles.
Yeah. I didn't like Carla's California veggie. Not because of the veggies in it. It was the fact that for me, it was just really drippy. And I don't like a drippy sandwich because
Me either.
just the bread gets too soggy. I hate soggy bread with a passion. So I couldn't handle that. It was too much.
To me, the addition of the dressing and pickled vegetables are a life changer because, like, this is the sandwich I always am forced to get as, like, the veggie option.
Right.
I mean, without cheese on it. And it's normally just, like, dry vegetables on dry bread.
Right.
And I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
It's the worst sandwich in the world.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I also didn't like Christina's broccoli Reuben, but that's just because I don't like broccoli.
Yeah, a broccoli sandwich doesn't sound so great to me, but
I like Sola's idli podi fried chicken.
Yeah, that looked great.
Sandwich.
That looked really nice.
Sola's and Andy's were probably my favorite. The fried chicken sandwich and Andy's deli style sandwich. The way you were saying that the addition of the pickled veggies are kind of game changing for you. The idea of putting jalapeno kettle chips on a sandwich was the game changer for me. That
Yes.
sounds so good.
Genius. And I have to also give a shout out to Priya's like Indian cheese on toast, basically. That looked amazing. So good.
Not
I would
a
love to
sandwich.
try that. No, exactly. But it did look delicious.
Priya's always breaking the rules.
It's true.
Okay, let's move on to the next video, one we've been talking about. Chris makes kale pesto pasta.
Yeah, apparently anything can be a pesto, which I felt like should be your t-shirt, Justine.
That's what I tell people. I'm like, if it's green and it's got nuts in it, you can make a pesto.
Exactly. So we've both made this, Justine. You've obviously veganized it. I just made it straight as per Chris's recipe. What did you think?
I thought it was interesting that when I made it, it didn't look like the one that he made. And I
Okay.
was wondering if it was because I didn't have like a high speed blender like they do. And I feel like I felt insecure about it until I saw the picture of yours because I feel like mine looked like yours.
Yeah, I think that was because I don't have the same blender that they do. So I wasn't able to get it like the smooth green consistency. Mine was more like little flecks of kale, basically.
Yeah.
Tiny ones.
I was feeling down about that.
No, I didn't. That didn't bother me at all, because when I get pesto, like regular pesto from the store in a jar, it's like little flecks as well. It's not like super smooth. So I was fine with it. The thing I was worried about is whether I would be able to squeeze enough water out of the kale. I was just worried about it being too wet. So that it would just taste like this weird, like, vegetable-y kale, like too overpowering with kale water, basically, which is not the nicest taste in the world. Because when you blanch it, obviously, the kale goes super green, but then you also start smelling like the smell of boiled kale, which is not the best smell in the world. And I was like, oh God, I need to get rid of as much water as I possibly can so that it gets, you know, you get the right flavour in there. I was worried about that, but it turned out fine. I squeezed enough out, and it was no problem at all. And actually I was super surprised how much like regular pesto it tasted. I tried it and I couldn't tell that, I couldn't pick out the fact that it was kale. If I'd have just been served it in a restaurant and not known any better, I would have just assumed it was regular pesto.
No, it was good. It was easy to veganize. Like, I just used my regular vegan Parmesan instead of regular Parmesan, and that was it.
Instead of blender parm?
Yeah.
I didn't do blender parm, actually, because you only need 1 ounce, which is not actually a lot to grate. So I was like, because in the video, he grates like a whole block, but he only needs like a tiny bit from
I know. I'm so glad I have my food scale now.
Yeah. So this was interesting because he did say in this video, you have to go by the ounce amount. And I was like, exactly, validation as to why volume makes no sense as a measurement. I'm so pleased you said that. Because you're right, like depending on how you grate parm, if you just go by the cup amount, you'd have a completely different flavour. It would be way too cheesy.
No, I struggled on that on my white pesto episode.
Yeah.
It looked beautiful.
Yeah.
That was what struck me the most about it. I can only go from what I saw in the video since I have not tasted it myself.
Yeah.
Well, can we talk about the video and how bad it was?
Oh, yeah. It was weird editing, right?
It was horrible.
Yeah.
Like, I did not want to watch it for a second time because it physically hurts me as an editor to watch this bad editing. I'm sorry to the editor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What do you consider bad about it? Explain to the listener.
It was like we were watching it in real time, and it just hurt me.
There was a lot of dead air. There was a lot of pauses that I felt really messed with the flow instead of... Sometimes it's nice to be a little bit laid back, but it did not feel nice or pleasant in this episode.
I don't know about you, Justine, but and I don't want to skip ahead. We can talk about this when we get to the video. But I also felt like the turmeric salmon video wasn't edited particularly well either. Like there seemed to be a lot of weird jump cuts, but maybe that was just me. But I wondered whether it was the same team that did this video.
I mean, I guess, they usually do these about a month earlier. So it's they hire editors for the holidays, so like the regular staff can take their holiday break.
Sure.
So I feel like it's not our usual group of editors.
It felt weird, didn't it? It felt like out of place.
What I didn't like about this video is that I think Chris was really sick in this video. He seemed really congested. You saw him breathing through his mouth a lot, and he's
been sick.
Yeah, so I just felt bad for him. I felt that I could see that he was physically uncomfortable or in pain, and it just made me feel bad. Like, Chris, please don't make a video for us. You should be laying in bed somewhere.
He was also sick on the food cast where they talked about the healthy-ish plan with Andy.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you could tell that he was under the weather as well when they were like, when he was waiting for his pasta to cook, and they were like, oh, it's time for you to tell some witty anecdotes, like perform for the camera. And he was like, no.
He's like, not today. I don't have it today.
I'm not doing that.
So yeah, it just felt like the editing didn't help that scenario either.
Yeah.
Another subtle thing that I didn't like about this, and this wasn't really anyone's fault, but a lot of it was filmed at night, which just made it feel a little bit gloomy, whereas so many of the other videos are during the day when it's nice, bright sunshine. So that brought down the mood of the video a little bit for me, too.
It may have not been at night. It may just be that because it gets darker sooner as well. So like it's just like late afternoon. But yeah, it doesn't help with the kind of generally under the weather feel that we were getting from that video.
Yeah. I do not want to ever watch that video again.
But I do want to cook the recipe again because I freaking loved it. It was delicious.
Good recipe, bad video.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that you guys both enjoyed the recipe because I wondered how it tasted because I felt that both Carla and Andy didn't really have much to say in the video. They weren't very effusive with their compliments. They were just kind of like, it's kale. And I was wondering, are they just not saying much because they can't find anything nice to say, or is it just they didn't have a witty comment in their pocket?
I don't think that there was a problem with the recipe. I think probably the latter. But there is I guess there's not an awful lot to, I mean, it just tastes like a pesto pasta. Like, doesn't, you can't really comment on it much beyond that. So, I mean, the kind of, the interesting thing of note is the fact that it's made with kale rather than basil.
It's yum.
It's nice. It's really nice. And it's easy. I didn't find it difficult to do as well. So I would recommend people try it.
Chris de-stemming the kale was so satisfying.
I love that. Talk about jobs in the kitchen that are fun to do. De-stemming kale is one of my faves. Like that.
Very gratifying.
I actually got my kale from a bag at Trader Joe's because Trader Joe's doesn't have bunches like that.
Yeah.
So mine was a task to pull out all the little stem things because they only have it chopped at Trader Joe's.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I got mine from the farmer's market so I could...
Okay, our next video, Carla makes a beans.
Just beans. No other signifiers. Just literally
beans.
Just beans.
I want to know who these people are asking all these bean questions.
I liked, my favourite bit about this video was them bringing the air horn klaxon for beans, beans. I was like, oh yeah.
I watched a great fan video that just was a super cut of every time Carla said beans, which apparently was 71 times.
I watched that. It was good.
The word lost all meaning. Yes, it's definitely worth
yes.
Or did it lose all beaning?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever made beans from scratch?
No, I don't think I have.
Once I made a pinto bean Mexican recipe from scratch with soaking the beans overnight, but it was a really long time ago. I honestly can't remember much of what I did.
I find it hard to get excited about beans, but actually by the time she got to the end of this dish, I was thinking I would eat the heck out of it. It did look like all the different flavourings that she put in, the aioli, the toppings. I just would never think to do that with beans. And I was just like, you know what? I could definitely eat this. Maybe I'll try it.
This was an interesting video for me because I absolutely agree. The end product, I thought to myself, oh yeah, I definitely eat that. But I didn't quite see the steps to getting there, like why aioli or why toasted breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are kind of
confused about that.
Yeah. Like the breadcrumbs I can kind of get because it's sort of a play on beans and toast, and then you get the contrasting texture. But I just would have liked Carla to give me a little bit more of the why behind it.
Yeah, I've never heard of aioli on beans.
Me either. I've never had that.
I'm not anti it though. Like when she said it, I was like, you know what? Yes, I'll go there with you.
I'm not jazzed about the dish, but I love the video because I just love the way Carla explains things. And it was such like a good contrast to like that Chris video that we have Carla coming out, explaining everything, telling fun stories. She's just like a gem on camera.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed this video. There weren't any other of the Bon Appétit Test Kitchen personalities who showed up in this video. Absolutely no one else.
Just
so
her.
Since it was just her, it felt very calm, actually. There was no interaction, so it was almost kind of contemplative, kind of meditating on beans, you know. I think she says at one point, "Behold your beans." And I just felt that was the mood of the whole video, just very even-keeled. Here's how to take it slow and make a big pot of beans, and it was just really pleasant.
Carla rolling out her philosophy for life, which is salt, fat, and time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the new Jimmy Eat World single.
Oh, oh, it hurts because it's true. No, yeah, she had a lot of great phrases in this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, out of context VA on Twitter can have a field day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's no bad thing to give them some fodder.
I was thinking, of course, these beans are going to taste good if you add literally an inch of fat to it.
Yeah.
Anything's going to taste good with an inch of fat.
I also loved
Yeah.
the idea of Carla's refrigerator and the fact that she just hoards fat. I was like, of course you do, Carla. Of course. I'd love to see a tour of
Yeah.
her refrigerator to see what else she has in there.
Well, I kind of don't like recipes that are like, whatever you have lying around the house. Because I'm like, I never have anything lying around the house. My fridge is empty. Help
Oh,
me.
I have so much shit lying around the house that I end up having to throw away because I don't think of things to do with it in time. So I like stuff like that.
That was actually one thing I didn't totally like about this video, was that it was so open-ended, and I know it was purposefully so. They were even like, you can do this with any bean, but I wanted a little bit more direction, and also maybe a few more indicators about when your beans should be done, because she provides this tip of the skin should start to peel back, and that shows that it's done. But actually, that's not really true. And I thought, okay, well, then what is an actual indicator of your beans being done? And she said, your beans are done when they're done. And I know she was being imprecise because she was trying to make it universal for all beans. And I'm sure depending on the size or the density of the bean, the time may vary widely. But I think even a ballpark estimate would be good. There was one little pop-up that said her beans had been cooking for about an hour. But if I were to attempt this at home, I don't know if I'd feel much more confident even after watching this video.
Yeah, like bean inclusivity is one thing, but we kind of need to understand what the indicator is that we're looking for here.
Bean inclusivity.
No bean left behind.
Well, next we've got another Test Kitchen Talks. This one is Pro Chefs Review Restaurant Scenes in Movies. And I had just watched one that was exactly like this because they do this on the internet on like, I don't know, BuzzFeed or GQ or Variety, like pro something, evaluate something in movies.
Yeah.
And I literally just watched a pro chef reviews a restaurant scene, and they used a couple of the same clips.
So there were a few that they reviewed in this video that I hadn't seen or heard of. So I haven't seen Ratatouille, but I have heard of it. But I haven't seen Burnt or heard of it. And also Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. I was like, what the fuck is that? I've never heard of that either. But I thought when this popped up in our notifications, I was like, oh, this is going to be either so gimmicky that I'm going to hate it, or I'm just going to love spending time with my favourite pro chefs. And it turned into the latter, I'm pleased to say. It was nice to see them and how they reacted to what was depicted in the movies. Because I feel like when you watch some kind of profession being shown in a movie with someone who knows what they're talking about, when they react to it, it can either ruin it for you, or it can be actually really insightful and interesting. And it just depends, I guess, on the personality of the person as to how irritating it is. And luckily, none of this came across as irritating to me. I think they were all, it was all interesting to hear.
That's completely my thoughts. As you were saying, it's either the person just completely shits on the movie, or they actually say something informative like, well, actually, in this scenario, this is what I would do, or this is what a chef would do. So I'm very relieved that it was more of them being informative to the viewer, and they did have a laugh every once in a while. But, you know, of course we can't expect movies to be totally accurate. That's part of the joy of movies, is that we're suspending our disbelief. So it's often like, just chill out. We understand that movies aren't real. But I feel like they all took a good approach to it in this
I agree.
case.
That was good.
It felt like Chris Morocco was just a movie fan.
Yeah, which it's interesting. We don't get to see, you don't get to explore like that kind of side of people's personalities. Like, you get hints of it here and there through the videos that we see, but it was nice to see them be like, oh, I love this one, or oh yeah, this is great, because I'm like, oh, I can get a sense of what you're into outside of work. That's nice.
I also really enjoyed the bloopers at the top of the video. I'm such a sucker for bloopers. Give me a blooper video all the time.
Yes, it was great. I picked up some tips in this video. The one that really stuck out in my mind was the getting the seeds out of a chili pepper by cutting it and rolling it. I was like, oh my God, that is genius. And I was so pleased to see them like blown away by it and having not been taught that either, because I was like, okay, so it's not just, you know, me, like pro chefs don't know about this as well. But I that was cool to like see that and think, oh, maybe I'll try that next time I have to chop one.
I believe that technique was from the Eat, Drink, Man, Woman movie that you mentioned.
Yeah.
That was also the movie that I had never even heard of, but that person's knife skills were so impressive.
Insane. Like, what?
I really want to watch at least this part of that movie now.
Really good.
I had to laugh at Molly doubting that Jon Favreau would have taken a crash course in pig anatomy. And I was thinking to myself, oh, says the person who took a crash course in pig anatomy.
Totally. I don't know about you, but I saw Chef in the movie theatre when it came out, and I loved it. I thought it was a great food movie. That was the big takeaway for me, was like, obviously the people who made this movie love and respect kitchens and making food, because they really like, it was like a love letter to the process of being in a professional kitchen or in a professional kind of food truck type thing, because it was almost like porn, the way it was like lovingly like showing all of the chopping and stuff. So I was really pleased they selected that one as one of the videos that they watched, and I'm glad that most of them seemed to enjoy it. But yeah, it was quite funny that Molly thought that he hadn't like researched it as part of the
You do
role.
one episode on Iberico ham and suddenly you're the expert on pig anatomy.
Oh, dear.
It really does seem like Jon Favreau's second passion after movie making is cooking.
Yes.
And apparently he trained with Chef Roy Choi for making the movie Chef.
Yeah.
And he also has the Netflix series, The Chef Show, in which he interviews chefs, which, I would definitely recommend that as well.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think LJ should see Ratatouille.
Absolutely. I am
do need
surprised.
To. It's like one of those things that I should have watched. Like, I know I'll love it. So
You're such a Pixar fan.
I know. It's crazy. One thing I loved about that clip, though, which I kind of turned to my husband and screamed in his face because, like, see, I told you, was where they talk about keeping your station clear and how important that is. Because I'm constantly telling Russ that, because when he cooks, he just leaves like this trail of destruction behind him around the kitchen, and I'm like, how can you even think straight if your like station is not clear? You must clear up after yourself. So yeah, when they pointed that out in the test kitchen, I was like, see,
that really resonated with everyone in the test kitchen. They were all like, yup.
Yeah.
Have you guys watched Gilmore Girls? This is a blind spot in my pop culture. I've never watched Gilmore Girls, but I laughed so hard at Gaby and Brad's reaction.
Amanda's the Gilmore Girl fan.
I have to say, I cannot tell you how much I love Gaby and Brad together as a pairing in anything. Like, this video was like another reinforcement in that opinion, because they're just so comfortable with each other, and it's just so nice to see them react off of each other. So I was really pleased we had them together in this video as well.
Me too. Another pairing I really liked was Delaney and Christina. They were so fun together, and she kept cracking him up, which delighted me.
You're the new Delaney's biggest fan.
I am. Christina says, Juli and Julia, the 2009 psychological thriller.
That was so funny, because I love that movie as well. Meryl Streep's hilarious in it, so yeah.
I feel like I want to see less test kitchen talks, but I know how like cheap they are to make. That's why they have so many.
I agree. They're my least favorite generally compared to all the different series. But I enjoyed this one overall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would definitely watch a BA Test Kitchen movie, though.
Me too.
Yes. Okay, so now we have It's Alive. Brad makes cured egg yolks, and it's not what we thought it was going to be.
My first note was finally, but then I was like, wait a minute, this is not going to be addressing that Ziploc bag that's been taped to the fermentation station for like 9 months now. Like, what is happening?
I'm so confused. I really thought it was going to be the baggie of yolk goo.
People on Instagram thought it was too. They're like, Brad, is this the one? And he's like, nope.
When is that goo going to get dealt with? I'm distressed.
It's just going to get thrown away.
Will we ever see it?
Will we? Ugh.
Yeah, curing egg yolks. I don't remember how I've seen this before, but I've seen this before. It may have been on the talk show that I used to work on or somewhere else. I don't remember. But you've seen this before?
I've heard that it can be done, and I think I may even have eaten the end product having it grated on something, but I've never seen the process or known what's gone into the process. I think I've just kind of assumed some things in my head. So it was nice to see what goes into it. It looked really fun, I have to say.
You know what? Of all the It's Live videos, I think that this is the one so far that I'm most likely to attempt at home.
Yeah.
Not because it sounded particularly delicious to me, but because it looks pretty easy and the dehydrator was optional.
Yes.
So I feel like this was approachable. The cheesy finished product, both in texture and taste, is really intriguing to me.
And I think it will taste it. Like the ramen noodle thing that he did at the end, I was like, that looks amazing. I would love that. And I actually, when they were talking about it being like a little bit funky, a little bit cheesy-ish in terms of texture, I was like, I just really loved the sound of like a pasta or a noodle grated with those cured yolks. It just delicious. Simple but delicious. And like the process of doing it looks like some kind of grade school science project. Like, do you know what I mean? And it's like, how do we find the dinosaur egg in the sand, you know?
Well, it's the same thing when you're curing a whole fish.
Right, yeah. Although I kind of like the kind of little size of these little yolks and kind of slipping them and then being like, ooh, where are they? Excavating.
Excavating.
Yeah.
I love that happened multiple times in this video. I loved this video. It was... it was like the BA universe It's Alive with like multiple flashbacks to like multiple things.
Yes.
And I'm like,
the flashbacks.
You got like Milky Way, you got the ostrich episode.
So many crossovers.
It was just like, wow, you cannot watch this video without having seen like 3 other videos.
Getting it, yeah. That ostrich egg, man. Like when Brad managed to get it successfully without breaking it. It was almost like he delivered a baby. He was like, oh,
yes,
come out. Oh, quick, put it into the salt. Like, it was really funny. But also the crowd that had gathered to like watch him like either succeed or fail was hilarious.
Which is weird because in the Molly one, which happened this same week but earlier in time for us, when she was like, here, eat my ostrich egg stuff, they were like, ew.
Yeah. Well, I think because they weren't having to eat it, they were just watching the kind of spectacle of him, like whether, because obviously he was saying like, if I break it, it's like game over, like I haven't got another one. Do you know what I mean? So it was like...
So they were there more for the
jeopardy.
excitement of like diffusing a bomb than actually wanting to eat the egg yolk.
But some people did eat it.
Yeah, they did. But his idea of using the kind of shell membrane as like a little shoot, that was so clever. Like just peeling off the hard, like sharp bit so that it didn't pierce it. I would never have thought of that. I would have fucked that up for sure.
Little velociraptor is going to come out and bite me on the neck.
Oh my god!
The ostrich
video was so good.
So weird, aren't they?
Yes.
They just look like insane, like something from Jurassic Park. It's crazy.
I loved all the references to dinosaurs, and this definitely had strong Jurassic Park feelings in it.
In the taste test, everyone seemed to prefer the duck variety in terms of taste, do you think you would do those, or would you do the chicken or the ostrich?
I would try to find or ostrich. I think I would try to find some duck eggs at the farmer's market. I've actually seen emu eggs at the farmer's market. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that stand that has emu eggs, they've got to have duck eggs, right?
Yeah, I'll go back. Where do you even get duck eggs from?
How big are emu eggs?
Emu eggs, I would say, I don't know if I've seen an ostrich egg in person, but compared to what I've seen in the video, slightly smaller than an ostrich egg, but also a deep indigo blue color.
Oh!
Yeah.
I would do that for an
It's
experiment.
crazy.
I wonder how much they are.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to the farmer's market. I'm going to look for an emu egg.
I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
I've made a promise on a podcast, which means I have to do it now.
You do.
That's the rules.
That's actually true. That's my life. I do think one of the things I loved in this episode is Rick's caption, cookie influencer. I was like, yes. Correct.
This video was so funny. I loved all of the titles for everyone. Hunzi was really on fire with the titles.
Yes.
Sola kindly humoring us. Rick, cookie influencer, like you said. Molly, unaware that she will film with ostriches tomorrow. Anna Stockwell, egg disciple. Chris, heard Brad say spoon. That was probably the best one.
Oh, that was hilarious. Yeah.
Or Claire, startled.
Yes.
Claire could have been like tirelessly trying to persist in teaching Brad how to speak. God bless her. She was just like, no, say it after me. It's like, just give up, Claire.
He just ignores her.
He just says no.
No.
It was delightful.
I loved the references in this one too. There were so many times when I rewound just to watch a reference again. The Law and Order dun-dun Dick Wolf credits.
God.
That killed me. I had to pause the video. I was laughing so hard.
And the other one, the loss of health points as he was chopping.
Oh,
When
yeah.
he's doing the
I
old
LOL'd
stare and
multiple
jive.
times.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So much LOLing.
All right. Well, then that takes us to the last video we're going to talk about today, which is Andy makes turmeric salmon with coconut. And this is also from the Feel Good Food Plan. So you're going to make this, LJ.
I am. Not imminently, but at some point over the next couple of weeks for sure. I'm excited for this recipe because I do eat salmon fairly often, and I have made it in a similar way, i.e. putting it in the oven on top of some greens or some vegetables of some kind and just like doing like a one-pan meal. What I haven't done is this coconutty crispy business, anything like that before. So I'm quite excited to see what that brings to the dish. And also obviously the turmeric oil that you kind of make and drizzle on. I imagine that brings something as well.
Andy in glasses is hot, as we would
Yes.
as guests.
Also, he's only 30. Oh my goodness. I was like,
I know.
Oh, baby
Sweet
Andy.
summer child.
Yeah. Sweet baby angel.
And Chris in the back wearing a red flannel.
Yeah, I feel like Andy transformed into Chris for this episode, and Chris became lumberjack chic.
Yeah.
Totally.
I couldn't help but think during this video, imagine Brad trying to say feel good food plan.
I feel like I can barely say it.
It's like
I
say
know,
it 12 times over and over, one after the other, and see how we end up. I thought that this looks a really intriguing recipe in some ways as well, because I have used those types of greens before, the Swiss chard, but I've never thought to use the stalks in the way that he's using them, by chopping them up. And also he made a point of saying that the stalks he sometimes prefers the flavor of the stalks over the leaves, which I thought was surprising. So I guess I'm curious when I make it as to whether I would agree with that, because I always think of the stalks, a bit like kale. I think of those as the bits that you don't, they're too tough, like throw them away. So yeah, I'm interested to see what that does to the flavor.
I'm excited to hear you report back on this recipe. Of all the feel-good food plan recipes, this one really struck me the most. I just love every single ingredient in it, and that coconut crispy topping sounds so delicious. And the end result is beautiful. I might have to make this one too.
I like how when they were developing this round, they just didn't want to make it like winter foods. They wanted to make these evergreen recipes, and I felt like this feels very summery.
Yeah, I agree. The other one that sticks out to me that is feeling more evergreen is the shrimp noodle salad.
Right, I was going to say that one.
In doing that as well. It's nice. It does work. Like a lot of the actual ingredients and the produce that you use in the recipes are seasonal. Like Swiss chard is super seasonal right now. But I can equally see me wanting to make that on a hot summer's day, and it won't be like, oh God, why am I eating this winter stodgy food? It's going to be good for that time of year as well. So yeah, I like that they thought about that as well.
Swiss chard just screams winter to me, and putting a dish in the oven for a while. The last thing I want to do is turn on the oven in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I feel like, I was like, could you like transform this into like a grilled recipe?
I think you could.
Or like steam it in the grill.
Yeah, I think you could do something to kind of tweak it so that it would work. Actually, thinking about summer recipes, like barbecued salmon. That's great.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out the Foodcast episode where they were talking about developing these recipes, you should.
It's a really good episode. I found it an excellent primer ahead of cooking them, because getting an idea of how their thought process while they were developing them, and their little tips and tricks that they've tried to weave in that can be applicable for lots of other types of recipes. I found that super interesting. And also I'm finding interesting at the moment, or through the kind of launch of this Feel Good Food Plan, the Healthyish Instagram, they were putting like little tips from Chris and Andy on their Insta stories as well. So I think they might have that saved on a highlight. Might be worth checking out.
Awesome, ladies. Now that we've recapped, let's talk about our favorite videos from this bunch and what dishes we would make. Do you want to go first, Meg?
Sure. This one is a twofer for me. My favorite video was It's Alive with the cured egg yolks. And I think that I am going to have to give this a try for the recipe as well. But I just really enjoyed the video. Yeah, it'll be a challenge. It'll be a challenge, but the very funny video will inspire me. It's the only video of this batch that I've watched multiple times, so it just had to be my favorite.
Yeah.
Justine, what about you?
Yeah, my favorite video is also It's Alive, because it was amazing. It was great. It was the best video that they've put out in these 2 weeks. And before it came out, I was like, I don't know what I don't know. These are all just basic videos. What I would make, can I count the kale pesto as I would make it again?
Yeah. Sure.
And it's like the only thing on here that I could make.
Yeah. You mean you don't want to make cured vegan egg yolks?
Cure those flax seeds somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, LJ, what do you think?
I think I'm exactly the same as you, Justine. I think cured egg yolks wins best video by a mile. But let's see what people think on that BA recap draft, because we might think one thing, but other people are allowed to have other opinions apparently, so that's fine. But in terms of what I would make, whilst I am going to be making the turmeric salmon, the kale pesto pasta is like amazing. And I know for sure I'm definitely making that multiple times in the future, because I love kale, I love pesto, I love pasta. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, now's the time in the show where we do some shout-outs. And we've got a few. Shout out to Margaret, who always leaves us lots of thoughts about the podcast and videos on Twitter. Especially, she had thoughts about the dog food video. She left us a whole trail of messages.
That was a wild ride, that video.
Yeah, were you live tweeting that one, Margaret?
Yeah. Thank you to Sunni from Book of Lies for listening to the podcast, and she let us know that she's never had apple butter, but she is down to go visit Amanda in Columbus for that apple butter festival.
think we all are.
Also, thank you to Drunk Dish Podcast and Erica from Lez Represent for listening. Thank you to Mrs. Casper on Twitter. She was able to catch up and hear our Christmas special, and she's happy to know that those brown butter cornflake snickerdoodles exist in the world. Shout out to @MammothLove on Twitter, who is going to lose their damn mind if Claire makes bagel bites on Gourmet Mix, which she totally is. They were hinting that. So we'll get that video in a month.
Whoop, whoop.
Also, thanks to Heidi from Vibrant Visionaries and Jen from One's Person Trash is Our Treasure for saying LJ's cauliflower tacos look delicious on Instagram.
They were freaking delicious. The biggest surprise of the bunch, I'd say, so far.
And lastly, thanks to Diana from Happily Ever Aftermath for listening to Amanda's side dish and saying she needs more singing Amanda.
I think we all do. Amanda's singing was great.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
For reals. Okay, so yeah, thanks everybody for getting in touch with us on social media and letting us know what you thought of the episodes. We have a review to share from Drunk Dish Podcast. It's a 5-star review titled Pod Best Friends.
Aww.
Really and truly, I feel like these peeps are my best podcast friends. Being able to nerd out over Bon Appétit every week with someone other than my husband has been a godsend. I can't explain how excited I was when I discovered this podcast. It's funny, sweet, and informative. I especially love their recaps since I don't always have the time to watch all the videos Bon Appétit puts out in a week. Give this podcast a listen and make sure you subscribe. It's a gem.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you so much. That's such a nice review.
Drunk Dish Podcast is so nice on Twitter.
Yes.
Always leaves such fun comments and interactions.
I really enjoy it.
For reals. Yeah, and we are definitely looking to read more reviews on here. So if you want to leave us a review, we'll give you a shout out.
Yeah. Rate and review.
Mm-hmm. All right, ladies, that's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, listeners, for listening to us.
Mm-hmm.
And next time on the podcast, LJ is making Delaney's Rent Week Gingerade.
Delaney.
Delaney. Thanks for listening to Pod Appétit, a Bon Appétit fancast.
We'd love to hear from you, so find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at pod_appétit.
And on Facebook at Pod Appétit Podcast.
You can also email us at podappetitpodcast@gmail.com and find all of our episodes on our website, podappetitpodcast.com.
Until next time, the test kitchen is closed.
Are you a true crime addict? Do you find yourself talking serial killers and missing persons at parties only to be met with uncomfortable smiles? Well, find your tribe on True Crime Snack Time, a daily podcast that gives you a little true crime snack to chew on. From January 1st to December 31st, you'll find out what happened on this day in true crime. Short, sweet, and chock full of crime, join me, Allison, on True Crime Snack Time. We're available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Follow True Crime Snack Time on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Crime Snack Pod. And remember, keep your friends close and your snacks closer.